What is up? This is John Nelson, and you're listening to Starting Block Podcast. If you're looking for a podcast that's going to cut through all the garbage and all the confusion of athletic training and get to the real nuts and bolts, then we are the show for you. This show is about giving you a raw, uncut look from our team into how to win as an athlete, a coach, and a parent. So I am here today with my host and buddy, Chris Scarborough. What's up, dude?
What's up?
And we have a good episode today. So this is Q&A. This is going to be our first Q&A episode. We got a list of questions from all our athletes and clients and audience. And so this is what Q&A is going to be. We're going to take 3 of these questions, and Chris and I will both give our take on it. Mandy is not here today. Normally she would be asking us these questions, but I'll play host and producer. And so we're going to get right to it and try to keep this thing under about 40 minutes today. So today's Q&A is really going to focus on the baseball side of stuff. So question number one. Question number one was given to us by a high school pitcher. I don't know if this was one of your guys or one of my guys, Chris, okay. But they asked what muscle or muscles have a direct effect on your velocity.
Oh, so okay. Well, good question.
What you think?
Well, is it a cop-out if I say all of them?
Yeah,
okay,
I know.
So, let's be honest.
To answer your question, bro, everything.
So,
all right, question 2.
All of them, no. Right. So, well, I mean, if you think about it, of course, you could just say, well, hip flexors, yes. Hip extensors, yes. Trunk rotators, yes. Okay, like the obliques and such. Obviously, to a lesser degree, the quads, yes. The hamstrings, yes. The calves, yes. Now we start actually working up to what people are concerned about, the arms. The external rotators, yes, that sets everything up for the internal rotators, puts them on pre-stretch, and it sets up the sling. Well, I call it the slingshot effect. I mean, you can call it whatever you want, but it's really it starts from the ground, right? It starts from the ground, starts working its way up the chain. Once you work your way up the chain, it's one joint then sends the energy to the next joint, sends the energy to the next joint, and it's almost like each joint motion just compounds the next until eventually. Yeah. Do you need your finger flexors? Absolutely, you need your finger flexors. But let's face it, they don't add a whole lot to the velocity of the pitch, but they certainly help control the direction of the pitch.
Yeah, I think when you start looking at the dynamics of pitching and what it truly is, there's nothing special about pitching per se. It's simply just the art of releasing the ball. Like, your brain knows how to throw. And the guys at ELP have heard me say this 1,000 times, is like, when you were 2-3 years old, you just picked up a rock and threw it. Like, you didn't go to a rock throwing class or take lessons to do that. Your brain knows what to do. And so I think there's been an overemphasis on the mechanical side, but also the isolation component. And I think the big thing is the concept of tensegrity, meaning that basically everything kind of works together. And so when you look at pitching, especially when it comes to the arm, don't get me wrong, like rotator cuff strength is important for sure, but the arm is just simply where the energy leaves, not where it comes from. And it comes from everything else in the bottom. So like being able to have, if you want to dig into the lead leg blocking and all that, that's, fine. But it comes from being able to gather the energy and then, as you go down the mound, stop, and the energy transfers up through the hip and spiral, the hip engine, the spinal engine, and then just exits the arm. And so, I think you can't look at it from an isolated muscle perspective. And that's how I evaluate it. What do you think about that?
No, absolutely.
Chris?
So, like I said, we basically got very specific on my initial answer, which is all of them.
So hold on. Excuse me. Yeah. So what muscles have a direct effect in velocity? So when you look at it from the perspective of, the arm and everything is just kind of where the energy leaves, and that it is a full body type of movement. It's the facilitation of energy throughout the system. I think A, you have to understand, what we just talked about. B is the muscles really serve as more of a stabilizing engine than anything, and where the energy transfer comes from is really more of the fascia and the reflexive component to it. But I guess if we had to really narrow some things down, rotator cuff, sure. But I think there's an overemphasis on band work, and I think there is not enough emphasis on the backside. So if I had to say a muscle, I would say back chain work. So I would say hamstrings, glutes, lats, lower back area, rear delts, because our nervous system's only going to allow us to throw as fast as it knows that it can safely decelerate us from. So without your lat, once you let go of the ball, if your lat wasn't there, then your shoulder would just fly off. Your arm would just fly off. So you got to be able to strengthen that lat per se to help decelerate you. You got to have the hamstrings. So when you plant, you're able to actually pull the body through and pull that energy through the hips and into the spinal engine. And the rear delts are important as well, and I think you're hitting all that with a lot of the band work and things too. So I don't really think there needs to be a total overemphasis on it. But I think in my view, Chris, I think the weakest muscle I see on a lot of guys is the lat. The lat is always weak, in my opinion. And, I think we have to have a deceleration component to it.
Well,
so
absolutely.
That's my answer. Hamstrings, butt, lats.
Hamstrings, butt, lats. Yes. All of those. And, of course, that's on one side. And then, of course, you got to have the hip flexor and everything on the opposite side, because, remember, we cross crawl. So so once again, like I said, they all have to work. They all had better work in a coordinated pattern, so that you can actually get the most out of each one of those joints. And there's not a muscle. Yes, I think you're right. There are certain areas that tend to be weak. You know what? And yes, do they need to be stronger on most athletes? Absolutely. Find those weak links, build them up, but build them up to where they coordinate with everything else. And there you go.
Yeah. I stole this from Louis Simmons, but I like having guys do. I feel like you pretty much just can't do too much hamstring work. I think the hamstrings are important. So I really enjoy I enjoy giving it. I don't know if the guys and ladies enjoy doing it, but I just like to do basic 200 to 300 lying leg curls, no weight, just laying on your stomach on the ground, 200 to 300, at a time, a couple days a week. Just because I always feel like the back chain's always weak, basically, because we just everything's front chain dominant. So, that's kind of one of my things. I guess you got to pick something random to do or focus on, get some extra hamstring work, not seated hamstring curls, at your commercial gym, not that type of stuff. But just a little extra hamstring work. I don't think ever hurt anybody.
Agreed. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that was a good question, man. I hope that helps you out a little bit. If you got a follow up on that one, let us know. Email to us or message it to us, and we'll get to you. All right, two other ones. Which one do you want to go with first, Chris? You want to go with the poles, or you want to go with the overhead?
All right, so let's go with the overhead, and then let's hit poles last, because that one's a little bit different than the other two. So let's hit.
Yeah. Okay. So the question was, is overhead lifting for pitchers bad? Should you do it?
Absolutely.
Yes or no? I am in agreement. Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. I think you absolutely should. I think timing and evaluation of it is important. But yeah, we're both in agreement that there's a time and place for it. So Chris, I'll let you go first, man. Go.
And I know that you and your athletes do a lot of scapular work, scapular pull-ups.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot think of the last work I have ever had with any athlete where there was not at least one movement that was overhead, maybe more than one. Now, that doesn't mean it's the same it doesn't mean it's a standing barbell press. In fact, I can't remember the last time we did a standing barbell press, but it might be a dumbbell press. It may be a water bag overhead. It may be an overhead run. It may be a scapula pull-up. It may be more than one of those things. It may be a push. It may be a pull. It may be a stability of something overhead. Something is done overhead with almost every athlete every single day, with a rare exception of an athlete who maybe has a medical, some medical reason for not wanting to put their arm over their head for a specific period of time. But yes, absolutely, you need to put your arms over your head.
So it sounds like what you do, it sounds like you're saying that the overhead component is kind of a part of something else you're doing. You're not doing as much like isolated overhead work. So like you say the tank, like a tidal tank, for example. You know, like we have some tidal tanks here. So tidal tank guys, there you go. There's a shout out. By the way, I need a new tidal tank. If anybody from that company is listening, I got a hole in one. But so you want to send me one, that'd be great for the shout out here. But it sounds like, Chris, that you say like you use it as part of other exercises. Is that kind of your take on it, or would you do more isolated?
Oh no, we
work?
rarely do isolated work. So I'll give you an example. Something we do quite a bit of here, and I don't know if this will be before or after this podcast, but George Benet with Pure Motion, we do a lot of work with say a single arm. Basically, it's a one arm clean and press. So it is by no means a traditional Olympic lift, but it is an Olympic lift nevertheless. It involves lunging, it involves rotating, it involves pulling, it involves pushing. And we'll get a video. I need to get a video on here, to demo that. But it finishes with the arm overhead. Now, it's not specifically directly overhead, like an overhead military press or something like that, but pretty close to it. Tends to be one-sided, so right arm is up, left leg's in front, that sort of thing. We do that a lot. We do that quite a bit. We do a lot of other rotational work where the arms will either start or finish with the arms overhead. So once again, it's the ending of a whole body movement. So yes, something that involves legs, hips, trunk, finishes with the arm. The one possible exception you could say is a scap pull. I mean, yes, we do scap pulls. Yes, we do curl and presses. Mm-hmm. But think of something like a towel curl and press, John. You know what I'm referring to there? The basic.
Yeah.
I mean, what upper body muscle is not involved in a towel curl and press if you do it correctly?
Yeah, I don't know.
I bet you if we put an EMG on your abdominals, I think you will find them heavily involved in a properly executed towel curl and press. So, yeah, even on something like that, I would say that you're talking about every movement we do is a compound movement, meaning some other many other joints of the body are involved than just the say the shoulder muscles, for example.
Sure. Now, do you get into any prerequisites before going into any type of overhead lifting or any overhead movement?
As long as they're medically clear, like you have any reason that you cannot put your arms over your head, okay? Unless you have been told for some reason, I have no idea what that reason would be. Don't put your arms over your head, or your left foot will break off. I mean, I don't know. I'm just making something ridiculous. Yeah. Okay. Unless there's some reason medically they should not be putting their arms over their head. Nope. We pretty much go for it. Like I said, there are a few rare exceptions, but.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, I agree with that. I think overhead work for athletes or pitchers is acceptable at times. Like your sport requires that you go overhead, and so that can be a trainable feature as well. I think timing of when you do it's going to be very important. So obviously, as you increase your throwing increases, the volume there increases. Like obviously any type of heavy work needs to be cut down. But honestly, we don't do a lot of heavy overhead stuff, anyways. But I think one of the things that I try to look at a lot is do you have the capacity to be able to do that? And I think like you said, like unless you have a medical reason, I think when I which is true, but when I dive into it, like I'll definitely take a look at like the rotational capacity of the glenohumeral joint. So like, do they have adequate, external rotation? Because the rotational component to the capsule is going to come before the linear component. So, if we have poor external rotation, then, it's my opinion that you have no business doing anything overhead, because you're going to be putting a ton of shearing force on that capsule. And so it's just going to defeat the purpose. So, you can look at it from the external, standpoint. So if you're watching the YouTube video, you can see where I'm going with it. But then, you also, like I said, rotational capacity before linear capacity. But then, you come into shoulder flexion. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people that can't even get their arm to their ear, which I think it's basically the standard, at least at bare minimum, to be able to get to that range of motion without compensation. And that's a big one. Like, it does no good to get your arm overhead if you're having to hyperextend the lower back to do it. And if your rib cage is flaring out and you're trying to get the arm overhead, well again, that's just compensation. So, no, I don't think it's appropriate in that particular situation to be do overhead work. I do think those qualifications need to be there, in my opinion. Now, that doesn't, I think the type of work that you want to do, I don't really think the military, the barbell military press is going to be, the best option for you. I don't think Arnold pressing is going to be a great option for you either. But I think like seated shoulder presses, like from a neutral or like 45-degree standpoint, but like a seated one, not like seated in a bench, but like seated on the ground, where the emphasis isn't on the weight. The emphasis is on the actual coordination of the body. So like one of my favorite exercises is to have our athletes sit on the ground, like legs spread wide, keep them flat, go in that neutral 45-degree, elbow angle, and then go and press up. That way the emphasis is not on the weight as much as it's on the stability and the engagement of the rest of the body. Because like you have to drive, the legs down, like you have to engage the hamstrings or glutes, or otherwise you're going to fall over. I like that. I really like it's a weird exercise, but I like it. It's like an overhead shrug. And I got that one from Cressy, and I really like it. It's really weird though, but it's like, you can use a band, but you can use a rope on the cable machine. You step out and you get it overhead, and it's basically like a scapular hang, right? But you're holding it up, and if you're watching me, my arms are overhead, and you're just basically shrugging up and down. So yeah, it's a little bit of an overhead move. But, there's not a ton of compressive forces coming down on you, because it's actually pulling. It's a lateral flexion, and so, I think those are two good options right there. And then I think, like you said, doing some of the other stuff, like, like the tidal tanks or the water bags overhead, from a kind of a stability standpoint. I think that's when it's appropriate. But I don't think it's appropriate to be going like full-blown shoulder day. We're doing military presses. We're going to do Arnold presses. We're going to get you on the hammer strength, shoulder press machine, or doing like clean and presses or whatever. Like that I don't think is appropriate.
Right.
I
No,
think
totally
that's a waste
agree.
of time.
Yeah. It certainly needs to fit what they're capable of doing, which you can assess pretty quickly. It does definitely need to fall into their capability. That said, if something hurts, you modify it. If it still hurts, then you remove it. If that said, no, we almost always try to find things that are appropriate for that particular individual, with the arms moving in the direction of overhead. So that so the direction of overhead is pretty critical. Now, it may or may not be up there, biceps to the ears, but then again, it might be.
Yeah, I think, I agree with you. I think another one would be like, it's overhead, but it's not in the traditional sense that you think so. So like actually laying down a prone position, so face down, right, and working like in range work. So how far, like if you are laying down on the ground with one arm, above you right there, what is your range of motion? Can you lift off? Right, so theoretically that's overhead, but the compressive force is not coming down here, like towards the spine. The compressive force of gravity is actually coming down near the wrist and having you come back down to the ground. So like actually bringing that up to like a passive range of motion. So having somebody actually lift your arm up into like a passive range of motion and then letting go and you having to hold that right there. And that, because passive and active ranges of motion are going to be different. They shouldn't be. They really should be one for one, but a lot of times they will be different. And so, like passive range holds, or like hovers or liftoffs, from your end ranges, like those are good substitutes for overhead, overhead work as well. That's not going to put a ton of unnecessary pressure from weight, on the shoulder capsule.
So once again, back to the original question of the baseball player, should you be doing things overhead? Yes, you should. Now again, should it be modified in some cases, like what you're talking about, prone, whatever? Yeah, sometimes, absolutely. But your arms are built to go over your head, plain and simple. So if you can't get them there now, then we got to figure out a way to get them up there. So
agreed. So absolutely. Overhead work should be incorporated, but I think you got to pay very close attention to the capacity and when you're doing it. In the middle of the season, it's probably not a good idea to be doing a ton of overhead work. Especially loaded overhead work. But so I hope that answers the question. Moving on to the third and final question. The question is actually, why are poles bad for you, or why are running poles bad for you? But I guess I'll rephrase the question and say, are running poles bad for you? Yes or no?
Just plain
Chris?
Running poles. Well, they're not necessarily bad for you, but you're talking about for a pitcher. Are you talking about for a baseball player?
I don't know. I don't remember who gave us this question, but I would say, just a baseball player in general.
Think about, all right, so let's think about the dimensions of a baseball field. So let's just briefly assume that is a, 300 feet down the left field, right field lines. Okay, just to make the math easy. Is that okay? So what is that?
I'm actually Googling the distance because I actually don't know the distance between the poles.
It's like probably
in most scenarios.
Plus feet. Would that be 400 plus feet?
About 400 plus feet.
We're talking about a short field, a 300-foot down the lines field.
Okay, so we're talking about 400 feet ish, give or take a little bit, right? Okay, so 400. Okay,
it's probably gonna be a little bit bigger than that in most fields. If you're going pole to pole, you're going 400 plus feet. Well, what is the absolute furthest you would ever run at one time in a baseball? Ever run? Okay, let's say. Okay, what's the furthest inside the park home run? How far would you run?
Mm-hmm.
Is it not 90 feet?
What, 100, 120?
120 yards?
120. So because 60 is from home to second. Yeah, 60 is home to second, so second to home would be another 60, right? Yeah, so that'd be all the way around would be 120
feet. So now
60 to first. 60 to first. Damn, dude, we got to get our measurements.
I told you that.
I got a college. Okay, so anybody listen, I got a college baseball player sitting over. He's actually a high school coach over here, and he's getting me all confused.
Whoever over there saying it's 60 yards from home plate to first. I'm sorry, that is absolutely not true. It is not that far. It's 60 yards, 60 feet.
Oh man, I feel like we may need to edit this part out, man. Okay, so here we go. Baseball field dimensions. Home to second. All right. So the baseline. Let's see, baselines. That doesn't help out at all.
Baseline.
All right. Did you say you had the official measurement? You have the official measurements
from
over
home
there,
to
Chris?
first, it is 90 feet on a standard ball field. All right. So
Yes.
all the way around, from first to second, it's 90 feet.
Yes.
From second to third, it's 90 feet. From third to home, it's 90 feet. So total, if someone's running all the way around the bases, that's 360 feet. All right. Now, granted, you're not going to be running in 4 straight lines, correct? You're not going to be 4 straight. You're going to be running curves.
Sure.
So let's just give them the benefit of the doubt. If you're running a home, if you're running a inside the park home run, and you're just absolutely just killing it, trying to run as fast as you could, the furthest you would ever run in a game at any one time would be that 400 feet. Well, how many poles is this person are they being asked to run? Is it 1? Well, I could see that being justified, possibly. It's but anytime you run a distance, it makes you run over 9 to 10 seconds. You are training yourself.
Yeah, that's where I was going.
Slower. It is anybody who says they are sprinting for 20 seconds doesn't know what sprinting is, or they're lying. It's one of the two. It's one or the other.
Right.
Okay. There is no.
Yeah, no, because you're not, and the reason the energy systems don't work that way.
If you're going absolutely all out, you cannot hold that all out for more than 8 or 9 seconds. Maybe some people can do it 10 seconds.
Yeah,
but that's it. So let's just make it safe and say 10 seconds. You are not sprinting at your absolute highest level anymore. You're running at some speed below that. You might be running as fast as you can at that time, but it is not your fastest. So
correct, exactly.
Anything that takes you more than that 10 seconds is training you to run slow. So that's why.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's putting, depending on how you do it, I guess never mind, not even depending on how you do it. I mean, the bottom line is it's going to put you in a lactic state for a sport that's not even lactic. Yeah, I mean, it's it's a waste of time. Like build on that point, Chris. Like, it's not going to be your max speed is not going to go any longer than 9 to 10 seconds. Right around there is when it occurs. So anything less or anything over that, it's going to be sub max, and so you're going to be transitioning energy systems, transitioning muscle fibers, and all that nerdy science stuff that I can actually talk about, but I can't add apparently, and as you guys know. So, but yeah, I mean, it doesn't serve a purpose. And I think the old school way of saying, like, it builds, we got to have cardiovascular endurance. Bullshit. We have cardiovascular endurance in baseball for. You don't do anything. Your play lasts 10 seconds on average, maybe, and then you have at least 30, 40, 50 seconds to rest. And I mean, that is how our energy systems recover. And so it literally serves no purpose. And so, and I think that goes into football too. Like, I think football players are some of the absolute worst conditioned athletes on the planet. And that's sad because it's the same thing. It's the same as baseball. It's about 4 or 5, 6, 7 seconds maximum, effort or intensity, if that long. And then you got about 30, 40, 50 seconds rest in between. And at that point, everything can recover. And then you go sit down on the bench for, 20 minutes sometimes. So I think, so our running poles, are they good for you? Are they going to help you build anything, as far as the, the energy demands of your sport? My opinion at that length, no, they're not, in my opinion. Now, I think what if, we talk about like on the recovery side of stuff, Chris? So, you'll hear a lot of, let's go on recovery runs, and maybe somebody's implementing, lower level, pole running, as a way to try to flush out the lactic acid, which, by the way, it's not lactic acid, but we can save that for another time. What's your thought on that?
I don't think that works particularly well. I mean, if it were me, I'd probably, if I want somebody to recover, I would do iso extremes. I would not necessarily have them run poles or whatever. Now, that said, I mean, does it recover? Maybe. Are Are there better ways to do it? Yeah, much.
Yeah, I think there's better ways to do it. I don't know what what the exact literature says on the recovery side of it all the time, but because I mean, you can get any study to say whatever you want it to say. I mean, it's trust the science. I'm going to throw that in every episode. I think every episode I've dropped that, like, trust the science, people, which we'll probably get flagged for. But shoot, I don't even know where I was going. I totally lost my train of thought now. But so I mean, we know that submaximal effort is going to create inflammation. Submaximal effort is going to create inflammation. We know that velocity and speed is the only trait that can really recover everything. And so you're left with the question of, okay, yeah, maybe you're increasing blood flow, but at the expense of what? Like, are you not possibly creating just more inflammation, and you're already inflamed because you just played for, 3 hours or whatever? And that's my thing. Like, could it help? I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot more efficient ways to do it, for sure. I agree. ISOs are probably the best way, my favorite way.
And, what were you going to say? We're both familiar with NewFit, newbie technology, fantastic. ARP wave technology. Great. Red infrared
absolutely.
light therapy is great. There's been a lot of things done on those on behalf, and I'm not trying to, by the way, any red infrared y'all want to sponsor us, hey, we'll welcome you. But there's a lot of literature behind that type of technology. Cold submersion. So putting on sprain or strain, is it beneficial? I mean, I don't have a problem with it, but there's definitely no question that things like cold water immersion definitely helps, because it excites those little energy parts of your cells like crazy.
At the time of the at the time of the injury, or right after, the consistent use. We're going on a totally different topic. The consistent use of the ice is absolutely no. No, but I'm right there with you. Like, I prefer, our athletes do iso extremes, lengthen the muscle back out. You get the blood circulating there without creating inflammation, because you are in an isometric position. You get the blood moving. But then, the newbie, and our ARP is great as well. But the newbie, I mean, the master reset is huge, because the master reset it stimulates the parasympathetic system to, engage. And that's what we need. Like, the parasympathetics, the faster you can get to a parasympathetic or rest digest state, the faster the body recovers. And you're not putting unnecessary stress on the body. You literally lay there and let the newbie do its job. Or you could do, like loosenings too, because ultimately fatigue is nothing more than a muscle just shortening all the way. Like, that's all fatigue is. And so that is a whole other realm of running poles. Like, if you're doing it to recover, you really need to understand what fatigue truly is. And fatigue is nothing more than a muscle that has just shortened as much as it can shorten. And so if you're going out running poles, all you're doing is shortening the muscles again. It's the same process over and over and over and over again. So I think I agree. There's a lot more efficient ways you can go about the recovery process. Right. Other than going out and running poles. We don't even know if the question
was geared about recovery. We're assuming it might have been.
No, it's just our running pole's bad. Yeah, our running pole's bad. So, hey, good. I mean, good enough. So, are they good or bad? I mean, I'm gonna say they're on the side of bad, just because the purpose is not. It just doesn't apply to baseball. Yep. That's my 2 cents.
Scale of 0
What's your
to
conclusion
10,
on that one, Chris?
I'm gonna give it a 2.
There you go. Yeah. All right. Maybe we start doing that, like 0 to 10 instead of just yes or no. I'm a very no gray area.
We have to make the negative
white,
range. Hey, if we're trying to, no, I'm just joking. No.
I'm going to put Olympic lifting in the negative range. I'll just go ahead and put that out there. Olympic lifting is a negative 10. So that's where I stand on that one. All right. Well, that's all we got for today. Chris, you got anything else you wanted to add in there?
Look forward to doing more of these Q&As. Cool. Send them in again. Send email by text. You can send it by way of can they now? Did you say we can now rate and review? John, did you tell me that? So rate and review. So
yes,
hey, leave
yeah,
a comment,
yeah,
in the review, and we'll find it. You want to ask us a question, we'll find it, and try to answer on the next Q&A.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, like Chris said, go give the show a rate, please. Like I say every show, share the show and give us a rating. I mean, this is we do this for the coaches and the athletes and the parents, who want to get a start on true athletic development. So give us a rating, help us grow the show, share it, send your questions in. Like Chris said, Instagram, his is fast_agile or fast
Yes,
underscore
fast
and agile. Is that right? What is it, Chris?
And underscore agile _ 49.
Okay, that's right. That's why you say it. And then ELP word, elite level performance on everything. You can also email the questions in at info@elitelevelperformance.com, or just drop it off in the topic box here at our front door. We'll try to do the Q&A a couple more times a month. I know that was kind of one of the more highly requested shows. And keep them coming. And that's the show, guys. So go share the show. Appreciate you guys. Love you guys.
Yep.
Have a great day. See you, Chris.